Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Lehigh County Authority Board of Directors meeting of September 9th, 2024. This meeting is being recorded and it's available also online. Let's have a roll call of the Board of Directors first.
Okay, roll call of the board. Brian Noggle.
Here.
Amir Famili.
Here.
Ted Lyons. Jeff Morgan.
Here.
Norma Cusick.
Here.
Kevin Baker.
Here.
Jim Rosenfeld. Here. Sean Ziller. Mark Gramis.
Here.
7 board members present. Do you have a form?
All right, thank you. Packets for the board were distributed in advance of the meeting, so everybody should have a chance to review. There have been no changes since the original packet was distributed. We did have an executive session prior to this meeting. No actions were taken, and make one adjustment to the agenda as a result of that. Review the agenda and a need for executive sessions beyond Thursday.
All right, so there's no additional executive sessions. The one that was held prior to the meeting was related to potential litigation. And the only change to the agenda at this time is we'd like to remove the first item under finance and administration related to capacity.
So done. All right. Now move on to the approval of the minutes from the August 26th, 2024 board meeting minutes.
So I would make a motion that the August 26th, 2024 meeting minutes be approved. Second.
Motion made by Jeff and seconded by Linda. Are there any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, ayes have it. Moving on now to public comments. Are there any public comments on items that are not on the agenda? Right?
There's no comments. This is Corey from the city, Corey Hambrick. I was just letting you guys know that Jenny McKenna and Brian Chamberlain are out today.
Okay, thanks, Corey. Welcome to be here.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to action and discussion items. We have one item under finance administration. The first topic and only topic in that is 2025 preliminary budget for discussion. It's our third round of this.
Actually, this is our first round for the budget.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
So the
we
actual
did
annual budget.
annual budget. We did capital plan last month. We're starting budget this month. It'll all come together in October.
Feels like the third round.
All right, thank you.
I do have a bit of a presentation to share. Ed and I will sort of go back and forth on this one. And to be clear, we are really doing a preview of major assumptions, not really digging into numbers today. So. All right, so 2025 budget preview and assumptions. We have spent quite a bit of time working with the staff group on our strategic initiatives and other things that we see coming down the pipe next year, and I wanted to share some of those major assumptions with you. Our process for the budget, we start with budget assumptions today, talk about the strategic initiatives, staffing changes, any other assumptions. And Ed has some key factors on and a summary of where we think we're going with the budget. And then in the month or month and a half ahead, we'll get more into the numbers with a preliminary review. We'll get rate impacts and a final budget in October, and then rate adoption in November. I believe it's at this meeting on the 14th of October. We'll also ask for capital plan approval. So a lot of stuff coming up in the next few meetings. So getting into some of these strategic initiatives, we have a number of things going on, and I know the board is very familiar with some of these items. Really kind of broke them up into a couple categories, ones that require staff support and ones that maybe don't require staff support but need other resources allocated in 2025. So we have, and I'm going to go through each of these four that are shown in more detail. We have a regional sewer plan, which is the primary goal is to submit the Act 537 plan next year and develop some of the supporting programs we want to talk about. For our lead program, key initiative or key targets would be the first two cycles of replacements and get ourselves in a good spot to apply for grant funding for cycle 3. Under asset management, we have our target of completing asset management plans for 50% of all systems and some technology integrations that along with that. That's a significant effort. And then there's some other ideas we would like to share with you today for 2025. Those four initiatives require some staff support, and then we have some other items that are just requiring additional either consultant or purchasing of equipment. So the Tyler or Munis implementation project is going to carry forward into 2025. Some safety items related to systems and tracking and training on safety. And then our staffing plan, and more specifically, our building optimization plan. So how are we using our space and making room for the growing team that we have here at LCA? Okay, so since 2013, when we took the responsibility for the city of Allentown water and sewer system, that's really been transformational for LCA. And during that time, since 2013, we have focused on building internal capacity for core services. And you can see we've added 26 and a half new positions in that time frame. And those positions are pretty heavily weighted in the core functions of the organization: operations and maintenance, customer service and billing, administration, HR, and finance. And then I started adding in some other areas like capital works and compliance and inspection, et cetera. So just to give you a flavor of where we've added positions over the last 11 years. And as you know, the things that are on our list of key strategies, they've been part of our, part of our thought process for quite a few years now as it relates to the regional sewer plan, the lead program, the process improvement, asset management, et cetera. So getting into the first one, which relates to the regional sewer program, we have a few things that we're working on, and on this slide and a couple of the slides, I'm listing what the concepts are, but then also what the unknown issues are. So under this area, we have a few things we're working on related to regional programs. So the first one being a regional high-strength surcharge program. Currently, we have a high-strength surcharge program in place just for one municipality that wants that information. That's Upper Macungie Township. Expanding that program to all municipalities in the Kleins Island sewer system would be beneficial in that we can target the costs associated with treating high-strength waste to the customers that are discharging that high-strength waste. However, putting a program like that together will require agreement by the municipalities and will require an expansion of our workload in that arena. So, that's something that we're sort of working through right now with municipalities. Same thing with the regional inflow and infiltration program. It's a program that the municipalities are interested in exploring, and that would entail pooling our funds in a way that would allow us to put investment toward the systems that are leaking the most and get the biggest bang for the buck from that regional investment on I&I. We also require some support to implement. And then a sewage billing meter program, that's another piece of getting all the metering data from all 15 municipalities into a centralized location for better tracking and visibility. So in order to implement those programs or start working on implementing, we absolutely will need more staff support. We've included in the budget assumptions at this point 2 inspectors or technicians that would be dedicated toward the surcharge program, and then a program manager for that I&I program. Have some future staffing requirements listed there, just to let you know we're thinking ahead in terms of what else we're going to need to implement these programs. But as I mentioned, there are some unknowns. The municipal agreement to implement these programs is not in place yet. And we don't know 100% if the municipalities are going to be on board with all of these programs or just some of them. And it may take some time to get through to having their approval on that. So for budget purposes, we wanted to show the positions, but the approach or the strategy here would be to hold on filling those two positions related to the surcharge program until we have more definition around that program and its approval. But for the I&I program, because LCA is responsible for the I&I program in the city of Allentown, regardless of what happens with the regional program, that position is required. Program, I have at the top, if you're interested, a link to one of our pages on our website that gives lots of great information about lead and what we're doing with lead in drinking water. The key thing that I wanted to talk about is how we're implementing our lead replacement projects. And specifically, we have a lot of unknown material on the private side in Allentown. So getting to complete that data set, the most efficient way or the least disruptive way that we've come up with is door-to-door canvassing. We've had some success in our pilot program in doing that with the team that works in Chris's field services group. At our last meeting, we discussed having CDM Smith do canvassing for our next cycle project. But long-term, to get all of that data collected, we really, and in a timely manner, so we can plan these projects out more efficiently, we thought it would be helpful to have some form of staffing support for that effort. And that will help us with our grant applications as well, the more accurate we can be on our project scopes. So I think there's still a little internal discussion that has to happen around this approach. Because it is a finite project, do we staff it internally? Do we bring on an external partner, potentially partner with community-based organization to do this? We still have a few things I think to think through, but for budget purposes, we wanted to indicate that this is an important initiative and put in the budget for 2 community canvassers and another half-time person for call center support, because that does generate a fair amount of customer contact. Asset management, this one's a little more straightforward. We've been building the program, and in 2024, we've had some success in achieving we're completing asset management plans on 2 systems, and we're trying to get a couple more done yet this year. Stephen Boone recently came on as our asset management engineer, so you'll get to meet him a little later. But if we have, I'm going to have to ask you guys, how many systems is it that we need to get done?
All
All of them.
We started with our vertical assets, and we piloted a smaller wastewater treatment plant in Township, and then we did Clients Island. So by the end of the year, we're targeting the water filtration plant, as well as 2 more smaller satellite systems.
So, and if I recall correctly, at Clients Island, that's a very large facility. Of course, it's the largest one. We have 2,000 assets that have to be cataloged and tagged and reviewed for condition in terms of consequence of failure, like failure. So some of that work is work that our interns this summer started doing, and it was sort of a eye-opener that we could get some help that's like a little more boots on the ground to help us catalog that information, get it into data systems. And so we'd like to add a +1 in asset management to support that effort and grow that internal capacity to do those programs. And then under the heading of other stuff, we have a number of ideas and thoughts that we wanted to explore, we would like to explore, I think are important, as well as some new requirements. First is there's a new law related to our PA1 call process, which is the mark out system. So blue lines on the street showing where the water lines are. There's a new requirement there that indicates we will, beginning in January, have to also mark both the public and private side of the service lines.
Service lines and sewers, so we're gonna have to actually mark up a sewer lateral to customer side as well. So it's basically double and a half the work that we currently are required to do.
Not an easy thing to mark those services also, especially in areas where there's plastic lines and other materials. It's not always, believe it or not, a straight line from the main into the house. So we're gonna need to fill a position for that work. We currently have 2 PA1 call technicians for the whole organization and adding 1 more to sort of spread out the. We also have been receiving some requests and requests for conversation and even proposals for LCA to provide additional services in the sewer operations area for the townships that we serve. And starting with pump stations in some of the townships where the townships are having difficulty retaining certified operators that are required. That's not necessarily their core function. And we have operators that it is our core function. So we're exploring that option with the municipalities. And if that's a process that looks favorable in terms of being able to recover the cost from the municipality to staff those positions and to do that work, then we would need to have a position to do that. And then we have a number of other things we've been thinking about and we've been talking with you about over time relating to converting to monthly billing for our customers, primarily in Allentown, but across the whole organization, to support affordability of our water and sewer rates. Also, the pursuit of grants and potential alternative rate design, new affordability programs. Those are all initiatives that I think we have adequate staffing for this year. We wanted to call it out here because in the future, if we do convert to monthly billing, we will have a need for additional staff support for the meter reading and billing processes. We have had some conversation with the city of Allentown about rate design and monthly billing in the past. And we just don't have full commitment or understanding of how those conversations will go. So we need to continue those conversations before we can move those initiatives forward. All of that together in a summary looks like this. We've got 1 regional I&I program manager, 2 positions for the surcharge program, 2 community canvassers, half a person for the call center, 1 for asset management, 1 for suburban plant operations, and 1 for PA1 call. And as you can see, there's some questions that have to be answered before we would fill all of these positions, but because it's budget time, we need to include them and show them. So 8.5 new positions. This is what it would look like if we're fully staffed. We currently have 170.5 employees, and there's 14 open positions currently, and then new positions that are being incorporated into the budget proposal. 8.5 will bring us to 193 total. Ed, do you want to cover this one? This is your information.
So this slide basically compares what our total labor and benefits costs would be. So this would be all in. of $22 million, compared to where we think we'll finish in 2024, $24 million. So you can see a cost increase of almost $1.7 million or 8.1%. A combination of wage inflation based on contractual rates, salary program, and it includes the strategic additions that Liesl just went through. And also playing a factor in this is, you know, as we've gone through a lot of this year with unfilled positions that were budgeted, as we're filling them, well, they create a variance too, as well as for people that are actually in for the whole year as compared to a partial year. So 8.1% this year. I believe we were at like 11% when we did the budget last year. So this is actually a step down from what we did a year ago.
Then we have some other strategic initiatives that are not requiring additional headcount, but there are some costs that we're including into the budget proposal. Some additional modeling, financial modeling support for regional sewer program, the carryover consulting services to finish the Munis implementation projects. We also will need to purchase some equipment to support the lead service line replacement program. We have $232,000 in for equipment and training, and I believe that also includes the software implementation for a safety
That is correct.
data management system. For the Allentown side, if we're doing rate design and affordability programming, some consulting services would be needed there. I mentioned earlier the building optimization plan. We're actually planning to kick that off this year, and we'll be in front of the board. I'm not sure when, AJ, later this month or next month, to start that process, and we think that will carry over into 2025 as well. And then some other items, we need to update our emergency response plan and our risk and resiliency plan. Those are required plans that haven't been updated in quite some time, and begin looking at a digital master plan and some other studies. So all of these items are incorporated into the budget proposal as well. Ed.
Okay, so generally speaking, we're assuming a 2.5% inflationary impact on mostly, I'll call it non-labor expenses, purchase materials, services. I know as Andrew and Chris are looking at some of their budgets, and we're not done with all that yet. There's probably going to be some pressure higher than 2.5% on some of the chemicals that are out there that we use. So so 2.5 is kind of a general minimum guideline. City division will be affected by, well, our agreements with the city on the tables. Suburban wastewater rates, given all the signatory billing mechanics, that will be by agreement. And we expect that suburban water revenue growth will be 7.65%. As we're looking at the internal service budget, this is a simple bridge that compares 2024 $3.3 million to the $4.6 million that is included in the budget. You can see the effects of inflation again at 2.5%. Insurance premiums are going up significantly this year. Property and liability, especially, I believe, in the neighborhood of 18%. So that's been a big hit for us. We're budgeting $175,000 increase in HR consulting through the use of the different people for recruiting, training, education, and also to do some of the programs that we have, such as the monitoring program for CDL, pre-employment testing, post-employment testing, stuff like that. The big hitter is, of course, the $808,000 of stuff that Liesl talked about in terms of consulting costs. And then altogether, $102,000 as you combine the rest of them. So the internal service budget is going up as a result of mostly the strategic, but there's some other things playing a role in this too. Again, insurance and other HR consulting. Okay, looking at the funds themselves in terms of operating expenses, suburban water, we're kind of thinking that's going to be in the neighborhood of 3.5% as compared to 2024. Yes, there's going to be that inflation impact. The impact from strategic initiatives is about $302,000. And then, of course, they'll get a proportional share of the internal services that comes allocated to them. Capital budget, we have $4.6 million. That is per the capital plan. I've not changed from that. Funded by current rates and reserves. No borrowing required, no new debt service. That is also in agreement with capital plan. Revenue increase, we are gonna need 7.65 to get to a balanced budget. And that includes 1% volume growth that's budgeted, and then a rate impact in the neighborhood of 6.65. Metrics, I'm keen on this, targeting net zero. So in other words, at that revenue, net cash flow will be zero. When we did the cap plan, I wasn't paying as much homage to what was happening on the bottom line cash flow wise. I was more concerned about how do we maintain 180 days cash on hand, which is a key metric for us, and what borrowing do we bring into play. And so as we're doing the budget, I felt strongly about not wanting to budget negative numbers and not wanting to have an unbalanced budget. So kind of that's the theme as we go across wastewater as well, but we'll get into that. On the wastewater side, 7.66% increase to 2024 forecast and operating expenses. Inflation impact, yes, 2.5%. The impact from strategic initiatives will be in the neighborhood of $790,000. Plus, they'll also get a share of the other internal service fund cost increases as well. The capital budget side, we're at $18.2 million. That is in complete agreement with the capital plan. This will require $10.6 million in new borrowing. That is exactly what we set out in the cap plan as well. Funding from current rates and cash reserves, $7.6 million for that budget. So we'll have new debt service of $700,000 in the neighborhood. Revenues, well, the signatory rates are mechanically under review. It's difficult to project volume increases on the wastewater side, so we budgeted no volume impact. Signatory rates will be impacted by capital expenses and city division pass-through as well. Again, targeting net zero. Now, we didn't do it. We had almost a $3 million loss in cap plan signatory wastewater in the wastewater side when we did the cap plan. So it affected our revenue requirements as well. So we're targeting net zero, and all the other key metrics should be better than target. We should have better than 180 days cash on hand, and debt service ratios are good. City division operating expenses, 5.87%. It increased over 2024 with an inflation impact of 2.5. Strategic initiatives will hit this fund about $1.2 million. And then they'll get their share of the internal service fund changes. Capital budget, $56.3 million, again, in agreement with capital plan. The $17 million will be required. That's per capital plan as well. So we're gonna get 15 million of funding from grants, which is what we showed. So the capital budget is pretty much looking like it did when we did the capital plan. $24.3 million of funding from current rates and reserves. Revenue, lease rates, increased 6.3% by agreement. Additional capital charges will be determined yet. That's in process. Signatory revenues will also be impacted by the capital spending as well. Cash flow will be negative in this fund, and it's not because I like the negative numbers, but if you remember, we borrowed $55 million worth of capital this year. So really to evaluate the cash flow would be over a 3-year period, and that gets slightly positive. So you will have 2024 being positive, 2025 being negative, and then 2026 being negative, and as you add up to 3 years, you end up with a positive number. All the other metrics in terms of cash, days on hand, which is key for us, and the debt service coverage ratio are all good. So what does the summary look like? Just going down that leftmost column, I guess nice to see that the net income will be positive across all 3 funds. Cash flows, you can see the zeros for wastewater, and again, the city will be almost in the neighborhood of $20 million. That's actually a little bit better than the cap plan showed. That was at like 20 million. Debt service ratio 2.32, 5.03, and 3.07, all better than internal targets. And there you can see the capital spending will total a little bit more than $79 million for all 3 funds. So what's left? Well, I know operations is still working on the budget request. They promised that this week sometime. Suburban wastewater signatory user charges. We're going through the mechanics as we get finalized operations numbers. We'll be able to start finalizing what that looks like on the signatory side as well. In terms of what's coming up, so on the 23rd, we will do, if you like cash flows, we'll see lots of cash flows on the 23rd of September. Then we'll also take a look at the rates, the refined rate review of rates on the 14th of October. Hopefully, we've got good numbers and the board can approve this budget on the 28th, and then we'll go into rate adoption sometime in November.
Just for clarity, I removed it from this slide for some reason, but we're required to have an approved budget by November 1st. So we're not good by the 28th. We have to act quickly to achieve that target.
Yes. So we'll have it all ready for approval on the 28th. Discussion, questions. A lot of numbers, a lot of stuff to think about.
Comment, question, board? A lot of money, a lot of people. A lot of justification required. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the people that we're asking for, there's not a ton of discretionary stuff in there if we're going to implement the programs that are required and that the municipalities are agreeing to pay for. But we can lay that out in more detail in future meetings.
I think in general, we can have an SG&A of just a people 8% increase, 11% increase. You have a limited revenue coming. You can expand your sales people, the people that want to buy. And then we end up in 4 or 5 years, the highest rate all the capital in the region. So I do recognize that, but at the same time, we just approved people for the asset management extra this year. I think we have to look very hard, 8%, 11% increase in the fixed revenue. It's a very difficult, and it's a lot of justifications.
The other aspect of that is overall, when you're looking at so many additional people, with overall review of, do we have the people in the right place with the right skill sets, and can there be more efficiencies within the use of our personnel? And it comes down to, when's the last time we did an overall review of personnel and the jobs and the responsibilities and efficiencies of that?
We kind of do it all the time. The work we did with the beginning staffing benchmarking that we did earlier this year was also to get at that.
That's just an ongoing thing, just justification, the review of functionality and efficiencies, and just to make sure that we're delivering the highest value for the people that we have here and for our customers. Okay, any comments by anybody else? Seeing none, all right, thank you. All right, next topic on the agenda. With that, we have one underwater, the Badger meter replacements seeking approval, blue documents within the board package, and digital board packet pages 7 to 9.
Yep, thanks, Lizelle. Okay, Amy Coco is going to present this project for City Division, is to replace about 4,000 obsolete or failing meters, water meters and transmitters. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, this project is for the City Division. Sometime around 2012, prior to our lease, the city replaced the majority of their meters in the system. These 4,000 plus or minus were not included in that replacement. So they're kind of left over from them. They're now 20 plus years old. It's an older style meter that has the radio kind of built into it. So when the radio fails, we can't just replace the radio, we have to replace the entire unit. So this project is to do that, to replace both the meters and the radios with new census meters, and then hertz, which are encoder, receiver, transmitters, but that's basically the radio. So the project is being done again through CoStars, which is typically how we've been doing our meter replacements. Core and Main will do the installs through a subcontractor, and then they will also supply the census meters. The ERTs are supplied through United Systems. So you can see in the memorandum that there's a separate line item for them. And then the Core and Main includes their material and also the install. So we have the Core and Main contract would be approximately 1.7 million. The United Systems is a little over 600,000. I don't know how much more there is to talk about. It's kind of the basic meter replacement project. We've had a couple of these come through. This is one that customer care department has identified as a priority for the Allentown system. Because those radios are failing and they are having to take time to go out and do manual reads, things like that.
And this finishes all the meters in Allentown,
Forever.
at least
Okay. Well, I guess if you include, the ones that were changed out prior to our lease, I mean, they're now 10, 12 years old. Eventually they will,
Right,
need
but
to
I
be
mean,
replaced, but
Technically,
these are all the ones that were left over from that.
The reading of these meters is just electronically radio signal, so nobody has to go out and read them personally, or are they something that has to be checked locally?
It's a drive-by, it would be
Drive-by.
the drive-by system that we currently have. What happens when they do fail, then you do have to go out and manually read them or check them or replace them.
Are you moving towards getting away from the drive-by and the full radio?
Well,
frequency?
the radios that we're installing as part of this project are they're called the 500 Ws, which is the latest iteration of the ERT, and it will allow us to, when we do eventually move to the,
Cloud-based.
cloud-based system, that these ERTs will do that. They will.
But the ones that we replaced before are not. So they would have to be eventually, in order to have a fully remote
Yes.
operation and the reading of meters.
Yes,
We
they,
still would have to go back to the old ones, which have been in for 12 years to make a full upgrade on those as well.
right, they would have to be replaced, but those are different, the newer style that they are separate, so you wouldn't have to replace the meter and the radio, it would just be the radio. They're different than these 4,000, where these are one unit that we're replacing with 2 units just plugged in together.
Is there any difference in the security of those systems, the new ones versus the old ones? Is accessibility, if it's built in inside of it, then it's not accessible for tampering, whatever. Is the external mounted radio system as safe as the old one?
Yeah, I don't know, because they're one unit, I don't know that it's necessarily internal to the meter itself. It's just that you can't remove it. And I don't know exactly, how much safer they are as far as tamper proof. I would like to assume that as the years go by, they continue to improve them and consider that.
Yeah, board questions?
You brought up some meter replacement, a couple meetings ago, is that correct?
Yeah, that was for suburban division.
Yeah, what was the cost per unit on that?
I don't know, and that one was just for meters because we weren't replacing radios with that suburban project.
I remember numbers around 250 and this is about 500 per unit.
Well, this does include the radio. We are using the same subcontractor and he did give us the same pricing for the actual installation and cost. So I would think that the difference is in the radio.
Yeah, the suburban project, I don't think we were replacing radios. It's just the actual mechanical meter. Yeah.
I think eventually, it would be nice to see. I do recognize this some of the requirement for me, don't take me wrong, but we gotta see an efficiency at the end of the day that this $2.5 million we're spending, what kind of efficiency we get out of it. Either from people perspective, rate that we can get higher rate or not higher rate, better accurate reading. I'm just trying to see in my head that we're spending $2.5 million. What do we get at the other end? And I think a lot of meter reading coming to us, we haven't seen that calculations. And that's the question Kevin asked about 3 years ago. I think that question still exists.
Yeah, I don't know if we can quantify the ones that are failing to report, which some of these are failed. So there could be some loss. I would assume it's lost revenue because of that.
Correct.
But
Is
I cannot,
cost-
I cannot quantify the.
Cost
increase.
versus, is the loss more than 2.4 million? I don't know.
Right.
Right. So I think, as we are adding people and some of the capital going up, I think we gotta be really careful to, the benefit analysis. Right? A lot of this comes up in front of us without a benefit analysis. And I think this is a change of culture that we need to have.
So, and when they fail, we give them an estimated bill based on past performance. So we still collect money, but we don't know if it's really accurate. And then we have customers coming back and say, when you put the new meter in, is there a true up on how far back they might have been versus do people get surprised by high bill because we've been estimating all this time? Have you had that experience?
We do, when we change out a meter, if we're able to get an actual read off the meter, we'll bill that amount as the final read on the old meter.
Okay.
The new meter starts. Sometimes that causes some anxiety if it creates like a really high bill that customer wasn't expecting. Well, a lot of times our estimating is pretty on target because we have in prior history, as long as there's no leaks in the house, customer usage doesn't change a whole lot over time.
Any more questions for Amy?
Oh, no, that's me. Oh, that's my mouse.
What's sorry? Something.
Yeah, we thought Mark has him, but it's.
Oh.
Most of the names.
Okay, all right. Okay. Not hearing any other questions. We have before us a capital project authorization. For Allentown Division, Badger meter replacement project construction phase to a total amount of $2,439,590.12. That includes the Core and Main LP professional services contract for procurement and installation, totaling $1,743,470.12. And also, United Systems procurement of equipment at is $641,120. So for the capital project authorization for $2,439,590.12. Are there any motions for that?
So moved.
Brian, I'll second.
Motion made by Linda and seconded by Mark. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Amy. All right, next on the agenda. We have one topic under wastewater, one topic. Pines Island wastewater treatment plant, chemically enhanced primary treatment study seeking approval. Yellow documents within our board package, digital board packet pages 10 to 22.
AJ, introduce?
Chuck's gonna introduce.
Chuck's gonna introduce.
Thanks, AJ. I'll introduce this project, which is going to be presented by Stephen Boone. This is a full-scale planning study to enhance the preliminary treatment capacity of Pines Island to handle more organic load. So this is a result of the scenario of a load shift from the pretreatment plant down to Pines Island, how to optimize treatment at Pines Island to potentially handle a load shift of organic load. So with that, I'll turn it over to Stephen.
Sure, thanks, Chuck. First thing, chemically enhanced primary treatment. I'm gonna call it CEPT. It's a little bit easier to say multiple times. So as Chuck mentioned, what's driving this is the potential future growth, or we know we have future growth, and the potential load shift, however that plays out at the primary treatment plant. So increased organic loading will be arriving at Pines Island in the future. The secondary treatment process is the plastic trickling filter and the rock trickling filter. They have limited capacity to handle increased loading. So this CEPT technology is really kind of a low-hanging fruit to essentially, it's just the coagulation flocculation process at the primary clarifiers. And it will remove additional organic loading that's not settled and make it settle and take that out in sludge form. So with that, we can protect the downstream treatment processes at the plastic and the rock filter. So this is something that's been talked about for a little while. We trialed our own jar testing in October. That showed some promise. And then we tried to take it to full scale, and the success of the jar testing didn't really translate. So this is why I would like to hire a professional consultant who has experience with this to really design and optimize, understand the dosing schemes, how and where to inject the chemicals, and really optimize it, and then do these full-scale demonstrations. Because if this is viable, this is really a pretty simple technology to implement at the plant to protect the current treatment systems that we have. I know you'll read through the capital authorization, but it's for AECOM is the proposal in your packet. Their fee of $168,725. We would be required to refurbish and purchase equipment, metering pumps, some piping and valving, et cetera. Not included in the authorization, but it is in the table just for reference, for information only. The purchase of chemicals, which would come out of our operations budget. And we're estimating that over a 6-month period of $320,000 approximately. But that's just for information only. So that's kind of the overview of why we're excited about this. You know, if you really want to understand that it's viable, because if it is, it's a very simple implementation at the plant to, you know, prevent some potentially costly alternatives.
This is a common practice using the polymeric material for coagulation, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So are we gonna have a waste with higher BOD so we know how fast these coagulate? I mean, if we have the regular waste, are you gonna measure the time of sedimentation, or how do you know the system, how much you need to dose?
That's exactly why this trial, so part of the optimization and the design with the monitoring and the measuring of the effluents, and also in consideration of, you know, flow variability. We're assuming, you know, the 32 million gallons per day is the dry average, you know, but that changes with wet weather. So AECOM will be on site to monitor, measure, and help us understand what the concentrations are. But you know, we have a desired target for the sludge production, right? Right. 4.5%. So we're only talking about an increase from, you know, 3.5 to 4.5%. But what that will do, will take out 10 to 15%, I think, approximately, of organic loading that typically makes it down to the plastics. And we'll be measuring that effluent.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Do you mind?
No,
It might be related to what you're talking about. I think I saw in the memo that you have a couple phases of the testing that would allow you to simulate the loading that might come from pretreatment.
Exactly.
So that you can see at a higher strength waste, what it can do and how to dose that.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, so the time of year that the trials are going to be performed, one is the shoulder spring season, which May is the toughest target month for the nitrogen effluent or the ammonia, where it's 5 milligrams per liter. So the first trial will have a 3-month period that includes May. So that's critical. And then the second trial will be when clarifier work at the pretreatment plant's going on, so that we get a pretty realistic condition of the worst case scenarios and potential future loading.
And these are new chemical to the plant, is that correct?
So it's probably going to be ferric chloride, but yes, this would be an additional chemical with storage, separate storage.
So we would have a storage.
Correct. And the order of magnitude of that is 10,000 gallons.
So, I have a question. So I understand the laboratory and the bench scale, but when you're doing the full scale testing, do you have any concerns that you're gonna underload the downstream treatment units?
So that's part of the trial. The kill switch is literally turning it off. If there are unexpected results, we can stop it immediately and then go back to the drawing board and work with them to optimize.
So all this is an anticipation of a change in our treatment system at the pretreatment plant and trying to make sure that we know what that change would mean to our treatment at Klein's Island. Okay. What if this doesn't?
If this doesn't work, there are other advanced primary treatment technologies. None of them have been seriously considered at Klein's Island. This is the best one. We hope this works. You know, but alternatively, then would literally be talking about potentially additional primary clarifiers, additional secondary treatment processes.
Spend 318,000 plus 324 for chemicals in order to not have to spend millions more later on.
Correct.
Okay.
And how about those glass things with higher surface area that we are using? The possibility as an option that we get a more retention time and more,
You talking about the technology for the pretreatment plant?
yeah,
Yeah, it's a,
not pre-treatment,
Sand spray.
sand spring.
Oh, the pasta wheels.
that.
Yeah, well, it's a different process because at the pretreatment plant, it's a batch reactor. So, you know, you basically simplify, just dump those pasta wheels in and add the additional surface area for the growth of the bacteria. But we don't have that kind of tank at Klein's Island. We have rock media and plastic media trickly filter. So you couldn't do that.
Okay.
I'll just add, there's a project not driven by this, but we're gonna be presenting to the board the second meeting this month to replace the primary sludge lines. They're old cast iron lines with glass line pipe. It's being done for operation and maintenance perspective, but it will allow the conveyance of a thicker sludge from the primary sludge pump station to the anaerobic digesters. So if this process, chemically enhanced treatment process works, we will be more able to convey a thicker sludge. Right now, the surface coefficient of the interior pipe, it's all tuberculated and it creates a lot of inefficiencies. So it will kind of dovetail with this project to optimize the volume of the digesters.
This is a demonstration of the technology, correct? Do you have any idea of what it would cost to go full blown on this for a capital project later on if this works?
So it is implemented, the equipment that's purchased, that can be retained. AECOM's estimated around $1 million a year for operating costs for this, if it's implemented permanently. Yeah, primarily chemical, yeah.
You would just double that amount there to 324,000. That's for 6 months. So you double that and then have some additional operation and maintenance. But we won't have to add any more pumps, I don't think. These would be the chemical feed pumps that we would need.
We'd end up adding permanent storage tanks, so I don't think we have an estimate for that yet, but it'd be $1 million.
Again, comparing this technology with that capital requirements versus an alternative if this doesn't work. Right, that's considerably more.
Yeah, we were just looking at the numbers. We have estimates for 32 MGD of additional treatment, primary treatment. That's $40 million. So we're talking about $1 million plus for capital for this. So it's much, a lot reduces in terms of the capital spend.
I mentioned this a couple of meetings ago, but the city of Bethlehem implemented this system, and my understanding, and every plan's different, but it is working for them. That's the option they went because they needed to. Their organic loading was approaching its design maximum, and they had to do some planning and some permitting and install the system permanently. My understanding is it's working pretty well for them.
Okay.
Brian, yeah, this is Mark. I just have a few questions. When you mentioned fluoride, I'm just wondering, is there any anticipation of increased iron in the effluent And also, is there anything that might have to be pH dependent that you would have to counter the pH with the ferric?
To your first question, no, it would be settled out. To the second question, Andrew, any thoughts on that? I don't.
Remind me the second question.
It's pH.
No.
Yeah, because my experience with ferric is, and especially like in building a bed or whatever you're doing in clarification, a lot of these things are pH dependent. Ferric does increase the pH content. That's why I was wondering if there was any, well, actually, yeah, if there's any sort of additions that might be required if you're going to ferric.
No, in my experience, we would be in the acceptable range for.
Okay, yeah, I know it's relatively inexpensive compared to other things, but I was just wondering if somebody's considered the effects of switching over to ferric chloride. All right, thank you.
All right, other questions from the board? All right. We have before us a capital project authorization, Allentown Division, septic optimization performance demonstration at Klein's Island wastewater treatment plant for a total amount of $318,725. That includes a professional service authorization to AECOM, septic optimization performance demonstration of $168,725, and purchase and installation of equipment for a total of $50,000. This does not include the purchase of chemicals, which will come out of our operating, correct? So again, capital project authorization, $318,725. So, motion made by Amir. Seconded by Jeff. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. All right, we have, next thing on the agenda is, item number 6, monthly project updates, information items, digital board packet pages 23 to 31, white documents within our board package.
Thank you. For this one, just to touch base on what to expect 2 weeks from now. A lot. Yes, thank you, Jeff. There is a lot. We will be presenting real numbers on the budget for our next presentation, the preliminary budget numbers. We also have some cleanup we need to do for the Penvest financing for cycle 1. We have some resolutions. We'll ask the board to approve. Those should be pretty straightforward, standard resolutions. Mentioned earlier during the budget presentation about the building optimization study. So we'll hear more about that at the next meeting as well. And a couple of other things I wanted to mention. The pretreatment plant critical upgrade project is coming up. We have plans to bring that to you for the next meeting. However, the pretreatment plan, as we've talked about in the past, it's challenging financially to address capital. And so we need to have some outreach with our industries about this project and understand how this project will be paid before we can ask for approval for funding. So if we're not ready for the next meeting, that may slide, but we absolutely want to keep that moving, keep that project moving. We've got a potential cost sharing agreement related to an expansion up at Wynwood Terrace. So there's a development going in there potentially, and needs a plan expansion that they would pay for. So we need a cost sharing agreement there. Also under wastewater, the project that Chuck just mentioned, the primary sludge system upgrades of the glass line pipe project, you'll see that also in 2 weeks. So a lot of stuff, a lot of exciting things going on here at LCA. There are a couple updates shown in part 2 of the report, and then the full listing of the remainder of the projects for the end, if there's any questions about it.
So when do we have our Munis system operational?
We have a go live planned for January 1, and I'll turn to Chris if there's anything else you want to say about like post go live, because we do have costs that spill over into 2025.
So yeah, that's the primary modules moving forward, 1.1, related to finance, our UB, There are gonna be some carryovers related to how we do asset maintenance, and a couple other things, which is part of the reason that we have some spillover monetarily into 2025. But, the primary goal that we're trying to reach of a new structure for our general ledger and our chart of accounts will be complete and ready to go, making Ed happy, which is why I show up every day.
I think a key target is we're running a parallel payroll this week in the two systems, right?
Tomorrow we start.
And if that's successful, that's a huge benchmark for us to be sure that we're on the right track with our implementation.
Project management,
So the project accounting is one module in Munis that's being implemented, and that needs to be integrated with the Procore system that is the project management software. And I am not sure where we are on either of those, if someone could fill in.
Yeah, so Procore is being implemented right now. We're gonna go live November. We need to wait until the Munis implementation is complete before we do the financial integration. So that'll be sometime next year.
okay. Thank you.
Okay. That's complete. All right, next on the agenda would be staff comments.
I have nothing additional.
Okay. Solicitor comments,
No comments today, thank you.
public comments on any topics whatsoever. All right, none. Board member comments. At our last meeting, we set up a governance committee. Was that able to meet in the last 2 weeks?
No,
Okay, all right.
in the works.
Okay, good. Just keep moving. All right, so any other board comments? All right, hearing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.